Hello, class. On September 23rd of 2022, the movie Don't Worry, Darling was released in theaters. The film, directed by Olivia Wilde, starred Florence Pugh as an apparent 1950s housewife named Alice living in a town called Victory with her husband, Jack, played by Harry Styles. In this universe, men work on the mysterious Victory Project, led by the town founder, Frank, while the women maintain the household. However, slowly throughout the film, Alice realizes that not only is the town of Victory under the complete control of Frank, but in fact, Victory is actually a simulation where modern men have entrapped women without their knowledge in this 1950s incel fantasy, including Alice's husband, Jack. The movie was panned critically, made a modest profit at the box office, but quite honestly, people do not remember this movie for the film itself. I mean, forget a Twisters reboot. People want to see a mockumentary about the making of this movie with everyone involved in this film's production playing themselves.
Simple yes or no, Mr. Plime. Please explain. Did Harry spit on me?
Did Harry spit on Chris?
A custody battle between Jason Sudeikis and Olivia Wilde playing out very publicly, with papers served to her while she was on stage at CinemaCon in Las Vegas.
There have been a lot of talk. These are the things that... there were reports of feuds, people analyzing body language, private messages being released, narratives and counter-narratives.
So I thought in between working on my Bachelor in Paradise video, which is coming, I thought it would be a fun little idea to look back at all the drama from Don't Worry Darling's production. But then of course I actually began looking back at all of this drama, and it was far more complicated and messy than I remembered. So let's get into it. But first, we need to talk about today's sponsor, Bombas. Y'all, I am so excited to be working with Bombas because I know y'all don't see my feet when I'm filming. Trust me, that's for your own safety. But I can guarantee that 99% of the time, I am wearing some sort of Bombas sock. Like usually they're compression socks. What I love about Bombas products is they're all thoughtfully designed for maximum comfort. I took this chance to stock up on some of their ankle socks for running because trust me, running is annoying enough without having to deal with toe seams in the front, and I also really love the arch support you get on all of these socks. Bombas makes the most requested items in homeless shelters: socks, underwear, and t-shirts, and donates an item with every purchase. Over 100 million essential items have been donated by Bombas across all 50 states. So feel good and do good with Bombas, knowing your purchase is doing some real good. New customers get 20% off their first purchase. Just go to bombas.com/Ashley Norton and use Ashley Norton at checkout. Thank you again to Bombas for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. Don't Worry Darling was directed by Olivia Wilde. Olivia Wilde is probably best known for playing queer characters on both The OC and House in the early 2000s. But in 2019, Olivia made her directorial debut with the film Booksmart. This coming-of-age movie was a critical darling with its nuanced depictions of female friendship, its sharp writing, and there was high praise for Olivia's directing ability from the entire cast. So when Olivia announced that she was working on a 1950s psychological thriller, everything a white woman could possibly want, everyone was excited to see what she could do with that project. Don't Worry Darling was originally a Blacklist script written by the Van Dyke brothers, who were best known at the time for writing the hit movie Titanic 2. They wrote Titanic 2. In the original version of the script, Jack's character is much more explicitly abusive, although for some reason, Alice's character only realizes he's a misogynistic abuser once she sees that Jack drew penises on a bunch of advertisements. The original script was not good, let's just say. The film was later rewritten by Katie Silberman, which significantly toned down the violence of the original script, but still played into this very dark homage to the Stepford Wives. In April of 2020, the lead cast for Don't Worry Darling was officially announced. Florence Pugh, of course, America's favorite British sweetheart, fresh off her iconic roles in Midsummer and Little Women, she would be the one actually leading this production. And it cannot be overstated how much Florence Pugh was responsible for keeping my mental state afloat in 2020. My daily routine during the early pandemic was playing Animal Crossing all day, with Cooking with Flo playing on the TV simultaneously, so that absolutely no thoughts could break through. The power couple that Sandra Lee and Florence Pugh could be, the tablescapes and mimosas those women could make together, unstoppable. But fun fact, this movie did not just star Florence Pugh. There were in fact other people there, unfortunately. At this time, it was also announced that Shia LaBeouf and Chris Pine would co-star in the project. Shia LaBeouf you might remember as a former Disney child actor with a bit of a chaotic reputation to say the least, even at that time. Although he had starred in plenty of well-regarded films, particularly indie projects in the last few years, Shia was probably best known for the most exhausting meme of 2015.
Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams.
I swear the worst guy you knew in high school just wore a black t-shirt on Halloween and went around yelling that all night. Honestly, looking back at that video for this awakened a deeply repressed memory of Shia's whole experimental indie art phase, where he was walking around with a paper bag on his head, and the Cannibal Shia LaBeouf song I used to sing to myself on loop in high school, unfortunately.
Wait, he isn't dead. Shia, surprise, there's a gun to your head, and death in his eyes, but you can do jujitsu. With body slam, superstar Shia LaBeouf.
He also, to be clear, already had his fair share of controversies at this point. Shia had been accused of chasing one of his neighbors with a knife. He was also filmed threatening physical violence against his then girlfriend Mia Goth in 2015.
I don't want to touch you. I don't want to be aggressive. This is the kind of that makes a person abusive. I just want my bag. Give his bag. Can I have my bag? No, I gotta get out of here, bro. I gotta get out of here, bro. Yo, if I'd have stayed there, I would have killed her.
Leaked body cam footage from around that time also showed him going on a racist rant to a black cop who was arresting him for public drunkenness, which he later apologized for and largely attributed to his ongoing issues with addiction. Make of that what you will. And I'm sure these previous accusations of violence will have absolutely no bearing on this story whatsoever. But also Chris Pine. Chris Pine is here. Chris Pine, of course, is one of the many famous Chris's of Hollywood, but I gotta say, Chris Pine. I think he's won me in the Hollywood Chris divorce. You know, pending any wild controversy that seems almost inevitable with any celebrity I say something positive about, I at least take comfort in knowing that Chris Pine wouldn't buy a historic mid-century home only to immediately bulldoze it and build a millennial McMansion on top of it. Chris Pratt, you know what you did, and I'll never forgive you for it. This doesn't really have any bearing on the story, but I do want to say that I have loved Chris Pine's slow evolution from, let's just say it, generic Hollywood heartthrob to just your favorite lesbian aunt who always brings incredible vegan stuffing to Thanksgiving every year. I just love this journey for him. When the casting was announced, Florence made a very excited Instagram post about it, which if you look at the comments now, they're all people warning Florence from the future to run far, far away from this project. The comment section of this Instagram post is basically like that one scene from Interstellar. No! But it should also be noted that this was all announced in April of 2020. So at this point, it was still very unclear when production would actually start for this film, let alone when this movie would actually be released. But it turns out Don't Worry Darling would actually be one of the first films to start production after the pandemic, and was set to start filming in August of 2022. However, just days before filming was set to start, it was announced that Shia LaBeouf would no longer stay on the project, reportedly due to scheduling conflicts. At the time, no one really thought anything of this, but in hindsight, it is interesting that all of the parties claimed scheduling was an issue when, according to Shia's IMDb at least, he didn't work on another film until 2022. And it's also worth noting that Dakota Johnson was also originally supposed to play a minor role in Don't Worry Darling, but she left in October of 2020. Specifically to film The Lost Daughter, and her role was later replaced by Kiki Lane. But Shia leaving the project so suddenly was also a much bigger deal because he was the leading man, and although it would probably be to the betterment of the film's quality to go with a lesser-known actor, this is a major production. So at this point, Olivia Wilde had to scramble for an A-list celebrity with no upcoming projects that would also have to be available at a moment's notice. And that's when inspiration struck. Obama's boyfriend, Harry Styles. Olivia has since said that she actually initially had Harry on the shortlist for this role prior to casting Shia. However, Harry wasn't available at the time because he was originally set to tour with this new album at the time. But now with COVID, Harry Styles had postponed his tour and presumably had much more time on his hands. And so Harry agreed to officially join the film. Harry had previously acted before. I mean, if you believe Larry's, he's technically been acting like he's not in a relationship with his bandmate for over a decade. But he had also played a small role in the 2017 film Dunkirk. And it did seem like at the time Harry was maybe considering making a transition to serious Hollywood actor, because he also starred in Marvel's Eternals and My Policeman in 2021 and 2022. But let's be so serious. Harry Styles' competence as an actor was probably secondary in terms of casting him to just his huge audience of Gen Z and millennial women who were the exact target demographic for this kind of movie. And trust me, when I saw pictures of Harry Styles and Florence Pugh together filming what looked like a period piece, I was stoked for this movie. Regardless of whatever circumstances caused this recasting, and even setting aside the negative press and scandals this film eventually got, putting Harry Styles in the lead role at the last second probably saved this movie from completely flopping at the box office. But outside of this film's production, this was also a seemingly tumultuous time for Olivia Wilde's personal life. In November of 2020, Olivia Wilde and her then fiancé, Jason Sudeikis, announced that they were separating after 9 years together, 7 of which they were engaged. According to reports at the time, they said that the split was very amicable and they were both committed to co-parenting their 2 children together, even though they were no longer in a romantic relationship. I think any long-term relationship ending between major celebrities is going to be big news regardless and disappointing to certain fans, but I think this was especially disappointing for some people because Jason Sudeikis was really regarded as one of Hollywood's golden boys at the time. I, for one, grew up watching him on Saturday Night Live, and I swear, half the things I know about Mitt Romney, I learned just by watching Jason Sudeikis play him all throughout 2012. I don't even know which parts were like bits and which were real, and I like it that way. But more recently, Jason Sudeikis had gained a lot of notoriety for his role as the titular character in the Apple TV series Ted Lasso. In the show, he played an American football coach hired to manage a British soccer team, and Jason really won people over by playing this lovable teddy bear character. I think in a sea of post-Marvel ironic comedy, Ted Lasso really stood out for its sincerity. And of course, inevitably, even though Jason Sudeikis was playing the character of Ted Lasso, I think a lot of people subconsciously attributed the characteristics of this fictional character to the real person playing him. So imagining this lovable character heartbroken from this breakup generated, I think, a stronger public reaction than it would have had Jason not played this role. But shortly after this news broke, much more serious allegations were raised concerning Shia LaBeouf. In September of 2020, Shia LaBeouf was charged with a misdemeanor battery and petty theft after allegedly getting into a physical altercation with a man, then stealing the man's hat and running away. Although this incident had reportedly happened in June of 2020, charges were not pressed until late September for some reason, so this was not public information when we all heard that Shia LaBeouf was let go from Don't Worry Darling. Moreover, in December of 2020, Shia LaBeouf was sued by his ex-girlfriend FKA Twigs for, among other things, alleged sexual battery, assault, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The complaint is publicly available and it detailed multiple horrifying instances where Shia was allegedly physically, verbally, and emotionally abusive towards FKA Twigs. In a statement to the press, Twigs said, "What I went through with Shia was the worst thing I've ever been through in the whole of my life. I don't think people would ever think that it would happen to me, but I think that's the thing. It can happen to anybody." At this time, another ex-girlfriend of Shia's, Carolyn Foe, similarly alleged that Shia had been physically violent towards her during their relationship. And shortly after this lawsuit was made public, Sia, who had worked with Shia previously, tweeted, "I too have been hurt emotionally by Shia, a pathological liar who conned me into an adulterous relationship claiming to be single. I believe he's very sick and have compassion for him and his victims. Just know that if you love yourself, stay safe, stay away." Although it should be noted that this tweet is no longer available. Margaret Qualley, Shia's other more recent ex-girlfriend from 2021, although she did not make accusations herself, said that she also believed the allegations made by FKA Twigs. To be clear, these allegations are vile, and none of these women deserve to be subjected to this abuse. In an email to the New York Times shortly after the lawsuit was filed, Shia said, "I'm not in any position to tell anyone how my behavior made them feel. I have no excuses for my alcoholism or aggression, only rationalizations. I have been abusive to myself and everyone around me for years. I have a history of hurting the people closest to me. I am ashamed of that history, and I'm sorry to those I hurt. There is nothing else I can really say." However, in a follow-up email, he wrote, Many of these allegations are not true, but he owed the women the opportunity to air their statements publicly and accept accountability for those things I have done. Shortly after this, Shia took a break from acting to focus on his sobriety, and this lawsuit is still ongoing and is actually set to go to trial in October of 2024. But now, both in light of multiple credible women accusing Shia of abuse, his convoluted, for lack of a better word, response, and his years-long history of violent altercation now being brought back to the spotlight, this then makes some people wonder, was Shia actually removed from Don't Worry Darling because of something like scheduling conflicts, or was it actually something more serious that just wasn't made public at the time? Shortly after the lawsuit was filed, People magazine confirmed that Olivia Wilde had actually fired Shia LaBeouf. And insiders who spoke to Variety said that Shia exhibited poor behavior and his style clashed with the cast and crew, including Wilde, who ultimately fired him. So from the public perspective, it seems that Shia may have created a hostile work environment and Wilde fired him because of that, which of course seems like a very reasonable thing to do. Olivia Wilde at this time does not make any direct comments on the accusations against Shia. However, in February of 2021, Olivia was on a panel with Bad Cinderella's Emerald Fennell.
Because I read that you have a no assholes policy.
Yes.
Certainly for me, I just couldn't bear the idea of anyone coming in and feeling like hostile environment. I just can't imagine like screaming in someone's face.
Someone who's a very established actor and director in this industry gave me really terrible advice that was helpful because I just knew I had to do the opposite. And they said, listen, the way to get respect on a set, you have to have 3 arguments a day. 3 arguments, big arguments that just reinstate your power, remind everyone who's in charge, be the predator. And I was like, that is the opposite of my process. And I want none of that.
And again, although this is not naming Shia directly, given the public attention on these allegations at the time and his brief involvement with the film, this comment is presumed to be about Shia. Now, I do apologize for the whiplash, but we are about to take a wild, no pun intended, detour in the timeline. In January of 2021, Harry Styles attended the wedding of his publicist with his new girlfriend, Olivia Wilde. The absolute shockwaves felt around the world, and not in a good way. They aren't just spotted one time at a wedding together. They're spotted walking around Santa Barbara. They're spotted reading books together on a yacht. Honestly, though, this is the life I'm trying to live. And Olivia is spotted time after time at Harry's concerts. One thing about Olivia Wilde is she finna be in the pit. I vividly remember seeing so many TikToks just of fans filming Olivia Wilde dancing at his concerts, either to make fun of her white girl dancing, hey man, some of us can't help that, or rage about how she's not a real fan, that she doesn't deserve to be there, that she should be spending time with her kids, not at a Harry Styles concert, even though she shares custody with Jason and parents are allowed to have lives outside of their children. To put it simply, people were very angry at Olivia Wilde. Part of it, like I mentioned earlier, is that Jason Sudeikis was such a beloved person at this time, and to see Olivia Wilde move on so quickly with a famous pop star of all things, I mean, it honestly sparks like a very similar reaction, I think, to the Ariana Grande Ethan Slater drama. It is a pretty short turnaround from her previous long-term relationship, and cheating rumors are rampant immediately. Also, because this is a heterosexual relationship with Harry Styles, there's inevitably a huge reaction from his fan base. I mean, just like with any of his public relationships. Many Harry Styles fans believe that this relationship is PR, which, you know, maybe it was, I don't know. But even if they were PR, Harry would still be a contractual participant in this PR relationship. Yet Olivia Wilde is like solely depicted as this scornful elderly witch trapping Harry and preventing Harry from being with his one true love. Again, Barack Obama. On a more serious note, people do also criticize the age gap between them. Harry at the time was 26 and Olivia was 36. Personally, I'm not scandalized by that. They're both fully formed adults. There is, however, probably something to be said about Olivia being Harry's director, in a sense his boss. There certainly are some power imbalances there. And whether we should encourage or condone romantic relationships between directors and their actors, it's also far from the first time we've seen something like that. I mean, no one cared when Darren Aronofsky dated Jennifer Lawrence, even though he was 26 years older than her, and Mother, the movie she starred in, the movie he directed, specifically involves themes of sexual violence against Jennifer Lawrence's character throughout the film. When 22-year-old Kristen Stewart was spotted kissing her married 41-year-old director Rupert Sanders, the world blamed her. She was completely written out of the franchise that starred her as Snow White. Even Donald Trump tweeted like 15 times about how much he hated Kristen Stewart. Gee, I wonder what the difference is between those directors and Olivia Wilde caused Olivia Wilde's relationship to blow up in the media like that. We may never know. I just wanted to clarify because I feel like I didn't make it as clear when I was actually filming this. Just because Olivia Wilde perhaps got more criticism for dating one of her actors as a director doesn't mean that the criticism in itself is invalid. I think we should probably question that about any director who starts a romantic relationship with one of their actors. I'm sure there are instances where, it's not exploitative and it's a totally mutual, consensual thing, but nevertheless, it's probably still worth, exercising caution in these scenarios. But hang on, this fling with Harry Styles isn't just impacting the Harry Styles fans. Rumor has it, this relationship has also ruined Don't Worry Darling's production. Around this time, several blind items come out which suggested that Olivia and Harry kept hooking up on set, where Florence Pugh had to take over directing because I guess Harry and Olivia were just going at it. They were busy. Feels like that might be overkill just for a PR relationship, but there you go. One anonymous source told Variety that Olivia and Harry were so out of control that Florence dramatically confronted Olivia, resulting in a screaming match between the two. This was later denied both by Olivia herself and 40 members of the crew who signed a signed letter denying that Olivia screamed at anyone, let alone her lead actor. However, there is some reason to believe there might be tension between Olivia and Florence at this time. For one, Florence, historically, has been a very chronically online girly. She was always posting from sets, promoting her projects, but during this time, people noticed that Florence has completely stopped posting about Don't Worry Darling, despite promoting other projects she was working on at the same time. Olivia also later posted a series of Instagram posts celebrating the movie when filming wrapped in February of 2021, and Florence did not like a single one of these posts, including the post Olivia made specifically to praise Florence's performance. And although, as I said, Olivia and members of the crew have explicitly denied any tension on set, Florence has never commented on this directly, which again feels odd given just how much press and rumors were circulating at this time. Another thing people point to are the very contradictory quotes Olivia and Florence provide regarding the sex scenes in this movie. In December of 2021, Olivia said, "I kept saying, why isn't there any good sex in film anymore?" Adding that one of her goals was for the audience to realize how rarely they see female hunger, and specifically this type of female pleasure. Given that this movie is about women being trapped without their knowledge in an incel fantasy world, crazy thing to say, but the movie isn't out yet at this time, so people don't know that that's what the film's about. But okay, according to Olivia, this movie is about the female gaze, female sexual pleasure. Well, in August of 2022, when asked about her sex scenes with Harry Styles, Florence said, "When it's reduced to your sex scenes, or to watch the most famous man in the world go down on someone, it's not why we do it. It's not why I'm in this industry. Obviously, the nature of hiring the most famous pop star in the world, you're going to have conversations like that. That's just not what I'm going to be discussing because this movie is bigger and better than that. And the people who made it are bigger and better than that." So although the tension between Florence and Olivia is never explicitly confirmed, certainly if you're inclined to believe that there is this tension, these quotes don't exactly disprove that. Back to the timeline, at this point, filming has wrapped. On April 27th of 2022, Olivia Wilde attended CinemaCon, which was the first big press event to promote the movie. This is where a lot of big directors, executives, actors showcase their upcoming projects to other people in the industry. Right as Olivia Wilde was getting ready to begin her presentation, however, a woman walked up to the front of the stage waving a big manila envelope.
The material, tangible things like a beautiful house and perfect weather and gorgeous cars. This is for me, right now. This is very mysterious. I'm going to open it now because it feels like it's timely. Is it a script? Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you.
Turns out that woman was a process server who was actually handing Olivia custody papers from her ex-fiance in front of thousands of people. And whatever you think about Olivia Wilde, she handled that situation with grace far better than I could have. If you're not familiar with process serving, this is a legal process in the US to give notice to a defendant in a legal dispute that there's a case happening. There are a lot of different ways a person can be served. I mean, we spent weeks learning about this in law school, so this is really just the highlights. But the person filing the lawsuit, in this case Jason Sudeikis, he cannot serve notice to the defendant himself. So if you're suing someone, you can't just walk up and hand them the notice. It has to be handed to the defendant from an uninvolved third party. So you can have the sheriff serve notice, you can serve through certified mail, or you can hire a third-party process server, which is what happened in this instance. I'm sure when it comes to serving celebrities, it is a lot more difficult just because you may not be able to walk up to their house and wait for them to leave. In fact, to get around this issue, process servers in the past have been very creative when it comes to serving celebrities. But the thing is, this step usually isn't necessary, at least with like high-profile people. Typically, an attorney will reach out to the defendant prior to going through this expensive and tedious process and just say, hey, we have a lawsuit. Do you want to waive service and just get this process started? That way, the person getting sued doesn't have to deal with the public spectacle of process serving. You don't have to pay for the process server. And the person who waives notice, who consents to being served, can more quickly start preparing their response to the lawsuit. Basically, waiving process sets up a much less hostile dynamic between you and the other attorney. You don't have to worry about, say, a warrant for your arrest because you were dodging service. Generally speaking, it is usually like to the benefit of all parties to just correspond directly and waive the right to notice, at least in my experience. So the fact that Jason Sudeikis, a public figure, would hire a process server to serve another public figure under these circumstances, it is very unusual. And of course, maybe behind the scenes, Olivia Wilde refused to waive notice. Maybe before this point, she had been dodging service. We don't know. However, Sudeikis and his legal team did deny any involvement in the specific circumstances in which she was served. Papers were drawn up to establish jurisdiction relating to the children of Miss Wilde and Mr. Sudeikis. Mr. Sudeikis had no prior knowledge of the time or place that the envelope would have been delivered, as this would be solely up to the process service company involved, and he would never condone her being served in such an inappropriate manner. And while I think it is possible that Sudeikis truly had no idea and he just hired this person, it is also pretty standard in the legal field to consult on the manner in which the defendant will be served. And even if Olivia hadn't been served at CinemaCon, given that she is a high-profile person, this probably would have been a public spectacle, even if she was just served at her work or at her home. And this is the mother of Jason's kids. Like, Jason's kids are going to have to see that a process server bought a ticket to an exclusive event, staked out, and humiliated their mom in front of thousands of people. All you have to do is look at the comments on the video of her getting served. They are just filled with misogynistic vitriol, just gleefully enjoying the humiliation of this woman. Olivia did later speak to Variety about how violating this experience was for her, saying, "It was my workplace. In any other workplace, it would be seen as an attack. It was really upsetting. It shouldn't have been able to happen. There was a huge breach in security, which is really scary." And Olivia also importantly said that the only people who suffered were my kids, because they'll have to see that, and they shouldn't ever have to know that happened. For me, it was appalling, but the victims were an 8- and 5-year-old, and that's really sad. I chose to become an actress. I willingly walked into the spotlight, but it's not something my children ask for, and when my kids are dragged into it, it's deeply painful. I hated that this nastiness distracted from the work of so many different people in the studio that I was up there representing. To try and sabotage that was really vicious. But you know, sadly, it was not something that was entirely surprising to me. I mean, there's a reason I left that relationship. But again, because the internet already did not have a favorable opinion of Olivia, this instance really wasn't met with much sympathy online. And unfortunately, things will only get messier from here. In August of 2022, a month before Don't Worry Darling is set to premiere, Olivia Wilde was interviewed for a Variety cover story. And importantly, she directly addressed why Shia was allegedly fired from Don't Worry Darling in the first place. She said, "I say this as someone who is such an admirer of his work. His process was not conducive to the ethos that I demand in my productions. He has a process that, in some ways, seems to require a combative energy, and I don't personally believe that is conducive to the best performances. I believe that creating a safe, trusting environment is the best way to get people to do their best work. Ultimately, my responsibility is to the production and to the cast to protect them. That was my job." In another interview with Vanity Fair, Olivia also said, "My responsibility was towards Florence. I'm like a mother wolf. Making the call was tricky, but in a way he understood. I don't think it would have been a process he enjoyed. He comes at this work with an intensity that can be combative." Although Olivia did not get into the specifics here, I think it is worth noting that long before the FKA Twigs lawsuit, Shia had a reputation as an intense actor, although he denied specifically being a method actor. He pulled out his actual tooth for a movie. He reportedly refused to shower when he was supposed to play a World War II soldier in the trenches of war. Shia, the people in the theater can't smell you, fortunately. I don't know what this is adding to the performance. Shia himself said that his co-star, Mia Wasikowska, called her attorney and said, "Get me the fuck out of here," because Shia's drunken method binges on the set of Lawless made her that uncomfortable. Although again, I was not there, so I do not know what happened. But to me, the idea that a man like Shia LaBeouf, a man with a long documented violent history, who is known for intense method acting, even if that's not what he calls it, the idea that that person would create a hostile work environment worthy of being fired over, that is not surprising to me. Although Shia did not previously dispute reports that he was fired when they were published in December of 2020, in August of 2022, seemingly in response to these interviews, he had something to say. In fact, he wrote a lengthy email to Olivia, which he also forwarded to Variety, and I think we should read it all. "Olivia, I hope this finds you inspired, purposeful, fulfilled, and well. I pray every night that you and your family have health, happiness, and everything God would give me. No joke, every night before I sleep. I have a little girl, Isabel. She is 5 months old and just beginning to develop the last half of her laugh. It's amazing. Mia, my wife, and I have found each other again and are journeying towards a healthy family with love and mutual respect. I have embarked on a journey that feels redemptive and righteous. Dirty word, but fitting. I write to you now with 627 days of sobriety and a moral compass that never existed before my great humbling that was the last year and a quarter of my life. I reached out to you a few months ago to make amends, and I still pray one day you can find space in your heart to forgive me for the failed collaboration we shared. What inspired this email today is your latest Variety story. I am greatly honored by your words on my work. Thank you. That felt good to read. I am a little confused about the narrative that I was fired, however. You and I both know the reasons for my exit. I quit your film because your actors and I couldn't find time to rehearse. I have included as a reminder the screenshots of our text exchange on that day, and my text to Toby. I know that you are beginning your press run for Don't Worry Darling, and that the news of my firing is attractive clickbait, as I am still persona non grata and may remain as such for the rest of my life. But speaking of my daughter, I often think about the news articles that she will read when she is literate, and though I owe and will owe for the rest of my life, I only owe for my actions. My failings with Twigs are fundamental and real, but they are not the narrative that has been presented. There is a time and a place to deal with such things, and I am trying to navigate a nuanced situation with respect for her and the truth, hence my silence. But this situation with your film and my firing will never have a court date with which to deal with the facts. If lies are repeated enough in the public, they become truth. And so it makes it that much harder for me to crawl out of the hole I have dug with my behaviors, to be able to provide for my family. Firing me never took place, Olivia. And while I fully understand the attractiveness of pushing that story because of the current social landscape, the social currency that brings, it is not the truth. So I am humbly asking, as a person with an eye towards making things right, that you correct the narrative as best you can. I hope none of this negatively affects you, and that your film is successful in all the ways you want it to be. Every blessing to you, Shia. And despite the kindness and healing energy Shia talks about in his email, the rest of his response is anything but that. Shia also releases alleged text messages to Variety between him and Holivia, which would have been around the time he was supposedly fired. In these texts, Holivia reportedly said, "Thank you for letting me in on your thought process. I know that isn't fun. Doesn't feel good to say no to someone, and I respect your honesty. I'm honored you were willing to go there with me, for me to tell a story with you. I'm gutted because it could have been something special. I want to make clear how much it means to me that you trusted me. That's a gift I'll take with me." But the most damning evidence Shia presented at this time was a video Holivia reportedly sent to Shia.
Shia, I just went riding my horse, very sweaty, but I wanted to reach out because I feel like I'm not ready to give up on this yet, and I too am heartbroken, and I want to figure this out. And you know, I think this might be a bit of a wake-up call for Miss Flo, and I want to know if you're open to giving this a shot with me, with us. If she really commits, if she really puts her mind and heart into it at this point, and if you guys can make peace, and I respect your point of view, I respect hers, but if you guys can do it, what do you think? Is there hope? Is there hope? Will you let me know? Okay, bye.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It is incredibly demeaning to refer to Florence Pugh as Miss Flo the way she did, particularly after referring to herself as the mother wolf looking out for her lead actress. But I do think that some added perspective is necessary here. Holivia did respond to Shia's email and leaks and clarified that the video we're seeing where she referred to Florence as Miss Flo was before Florence expressed discomfort with Shia. Insider sources and alleged leaked text messages between Shia and Florence do also suggest that Shia was in fact frustrated with the lack of rehearsal time, which was in part because Florence needed to attend the funeral of one of her friends, and this is the beginning of the pandemic. In-person rehearsal is naturally limited, but Shia, again, has a history of being a combative, volatile person on set and off set. To me, it seems like Holivia in that video, in those texts, did what countless directors have done in the past, where she played both sides to get her movie made. She likely had an obligation to the studio and production to try and get Shia, their A-list actor, to stay on the project, and I think there is also something to be said about, at times, having to placate and pander to a violent man's feelings just to keep him from lashing out at you and the people around you. Does that make it okay that she referred to Florence as Miss Flo? No. And should she have even hired this man who, again, had a well-documented history of violence prior to these lawsuits? No. Should she have declared herself a mother wolf vehemently defending Florence when that wasn't entirely true? No. Both Holivia and Shia seem to agree that Shia presented an ultimatum. Either he stayed on the project and they did things his way, or Florence got to stay on the project. And I think that ultimatum again speaks to Shia's character more than anything, but Holivia said that she chose Florence. And from Olivia's perspective, that was her firing Shia, choosing not to move forward with him. But from Shia's perspective, he could have the attitude of, "You can't fire me, I quit." And again, either to preserve his ego, maintain her own professional relationships, or to appease this volatile person, she did not expressly say that he was fired. And the public takeaway when these videos were released was that Holivia was a fraud, a hypocrite. And again, despite Shia's documented history of abuse, people celebrated his narrative totally uncritically. People were at least very sympathetic to Florence in the situation, which I agree, no matter which way you look at this story, it does seem like Florence was caught in the middle of a shitty situation when all she was trying to do was act, do her job. People already suspected that there was tension between Florence and Holivia, and given that video, that perspective seemed much more reasonable. But the drama does not even end there. We still haven't even talked about the most chaotic part of this entire saga, the Venice Film Festival in September of 2022.
You know, my favorite thing about the movie is it feels like a movie.
First of all, since Florence had done basically zero press or promotion for this movie to this point, people weren't even sure if Florence was going to go to this film festival with the rest of the cast. In fact, at the kickoff press interviews, she was nowhere to be seen. And truly all the actors and Holivia in this moment look like they are just ready to leave their bodies and ascend to another plane. Chris Pine was just staring off into space, which gave us these glorious memes later on.
How did it feel to go super viral as a Twitter meme? What were you really thinking in that moment? Me on an important Zoom call watching my cat throw up on the side. It's too good. My therapist, while I read aloud an entire text thread between me and a guy.
Harry Styles was fully giving like the popular kid in your high school group presentation, just waving and having side conversations with people at the front the whole time. And of course, people asked Olivia, "Where's Miss Flo?"
Florence is a force, and we are so grateful that she's able to make it tonight despite being in production on Dune. I know as a director how disruptive it is to lose an actor even for a day, so I'm very grateful to her, grateful to Denis Villeneuve for helping us, and we're really thrilled we'll get to celebrate her work tonight. I can't say enough how honored I am to have her as our lead. She's amazing in the film. And as for all the endless tabloid gossip and all the noise out there, I mean, the internet feeds itself. I don't feel the need to contribute. I think it's sufficiently well-nourished.
Olivia at the time said that Florence was busy working on other projects like Dune 2. And right when Olivia said that, Florence Pugh's stylist posted a video of Florence drinking an Aperol Spritz, having the absolute time of her life. And good for her. Then that night, Florence finally arrived, looking amazing, I might add. And perhaps because everyone was already predisposed to notice this, people point out that Olivia and Florence did not interact at all on the carpet, and actually neither did Olivia and Harry, even though they were still dating at that time, supposedly. But then, as Harry Styles went to grab his seat, this happened. Did Harry Styles just spit on Chris Pine? The frame-by-frame analysis. I saw this moment from every possible angle. Can you imagine pop sensation Harry Styles just walking up to you in a crowded room and just laying a fat loogie on you? I mean, some of you would probably be into that, you sick freaks. The way this incident required an official statement from Chris Pine denying any spit was spat. Incredible. As a publicist, you probably spend your whole life waiting for this moment. So for the record, both Chris Pine and Harry Styles deny that this happened. And I mean, even in all the craziest conspiracy theories about this movie, I don't think anyone thought there was actual beef between Harry and Chris at any point. But finally, the film was shown to the Venice Film Festival crowd, and it got a 5-minute standing ovation, which apparently was one of the worst standing ovations of the weekend. And can I just say, when people report that a movie got like a 10-minute standing ovation at one of these film festivals, I just don't believe them. Like, what do you mean you stood and clapped for 10 minutes over a movie? Even after a pilot takes me in like a Boeing metal death box 30,000 feet in the air and back down, I don't stand up and clap. Like, do we not have more efficient uses of our time? I'm getting off subject. So to sum it up, at the end of the Venice Film Festival, it seemed that any hope of positive press for Don't Worry Darling or Olivia Wilde was completely out the window at that point. At the New York premiere of the movie, Florence Pugh did not attend, and actually neither did Chris Pine, both citing scheduling conflicts with other projects. And finally, on September 23rd of 2022, the movie premiered to the world. I originally planned on doing a more in-depth review of the film itself, and if you are interested in that, Princess Weeks has a great video essay I'll link below. But suffice to say, the film is not nearly as bad as the 38% it has on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's not great either. And the one thing I did want to note was just how much the movie actually toned down the misogyny and abuse of Harry's character Jack versus the original scripts. In both versions of the scripts, Harry Styles is like straightforwardly an incel, whereas in the movie, Jack and Alice are actually married in real life, and he's portrayed more as like, you know, a well-intended, bumbling, raging misogynist who kidnapped his significant other. This change was probably made because Harry Styles fans wouldn't want to watch a movie where Harry played a wildly misogynistic abuser, but also, let's be honest, Harry Styles could barely handle the range and nuance that the role required as it was.
I gave you all of this, Alice!
He's an incel, but he's not like other incels. He's British. But the story is still not over quite yet. In October of 2022, just after the film premiered, a former nanny for Sudeikis and Wilde came forward with somehow even more allegations. The nanny leaked what appeared to be several text messages between herself, Wilde, and Sudeikis covering the timeline of their breakup. Although Holivia previously stated that there was a long gap between her relationship with Jason and Harry, the nanny claimed that Holivia and Jason were actually still together as late as October of 2022. The nanny described an incident where Holivia reportedly returned to the family home for a few days and attempted to leave to see Harry Styles, which led to a big blow-up between Sudeikis and Wilde. The Daily Mail reported, Wilde infuriated Sudeikis by preparing a salad for Styles with her, quote, special dressing in the family kitchen, leaving him ranting furiously and filming the encounter, before he tried to prevent her leaving by lying under the car. The nanny explained, the night she left with her salad, Jason had chased after her, videotaping her in the house. She was saying, I'm scared of you, Jason, I'm scared of you. And he said, if you're scared of me, why are you leaving your kids with me? And reportedly, after Jason laid down in front of the car, Holivia and Jason were basically chasing each other back in and out of the house for hours. And reportedly, Jason later said that he did this on purpose to make her late to go see Harry. The nanny also provided text messages which seemed to corroborate this version of events, but finally the nanny alleged that Jason fired her after he found out that the nanny was still communicating with Holivia, which allegedly led to these text messages. Jason and Holivia both deny all of the allegations made by this nanny, but what the public really wanted to know from this situation is, what salad dressing did Holivia use to seduce Harry Styles? And Holivia did not disappoint. On her Instagram story, she posted an excerpt from Nora Ephron's Heartburn, where the character made a salad dressing with vinegar, mustard, and olive oil. In hindsight, calling it a special salad dressing was perhaps generous, but there you go. But once again, no one really notices the allegations that Jason reportedly was going on multiple drunken rampages, that he laid down in front of Olivia's car to keep her from leaving, that he possibly ranted to his employee about his relationship before terminating that employee. I mean, what's described here is like straight up abusive behavior, much like Olivia's previous allegation that Jason targeted her with a process server to publicly humiliate her. And still it seems that Holivia is viewed as the only villain in this story. In November of 2022, Harry and Holivia reportedly were taking a break from their relationship that eventually became permanent. And in February of 2023, the nanny formally filed suit against Holivia and Jason, seeking damages for wrongful termination. The case was dismissed so that the parties could arbitrate privately out of court, but I would say Olivia Wilde's reputation was pretty severely damaged by the end of all of this. I think it's interesting that this film originally was in the works in 2019, shortly after the Me Too movement broke mainstream success. In that very short span of time, we saw countless other films like Promising Young Woman, The Assistant, Bombshell. At the time, it felt like there was finally some media acknowledgement and even exploring the exploitation of women, the disbelief of women. But because of countless COVID delays, Don't Worry Darling didn't come out until late 2022. And even in that 3-year time span, the landscape and attitudes of the general public had completely backslid. Roe v. Wade was overturned. Megan Thee Stallion was viciously attacked both in real life and 10 times over by people online who sided with her attacker. Amber Heard was sued by her abuser, and despite the well-documented evidence of her abuse, she was the subject of a viral hate campaign that, quite honestly, made me not want to go on the internet at all during that time. In the story of Don't Worry Darling's production, where almost all we do know is based on hearsay, anonymous sources, text without context, the world was absolutely primed to solely villainize Olivia Wilde, a woman with the rare shot at being a director in Hollywood. And this isn't to say that Olivia Wilde didn't do anything wrong. I think there is evidence to suggest that she was a wrongdoer here in multiple ways. There is also evidence to suggest that Jason may have been a perpetrator in the downfall of their relationship, that Harry Styles was an active participant in his relationship with her, that Shia LaBeouf, in very recent history, was accused of abuse by multiple women after years of documented violent behavior. I mean, Shia LaBeouf's role in all of this is barely a footnote in people's memory of this story. Well, folks, that is all I have for today. Sorry, I genuinely thought that this would just be like a fun, breezy video to do, and it ended up being more serious perhaps than I expected, but I hope that's okay with y'all. And of course, let me know your thoughts on all of this. As usual, if you want to see more of me, I upload a monthly bonus video on Patreon if you want to check that out. I also stream on Twitch a couple times a week and upload that to my second channel. And if you don't want to see any of that, that's cool. I get it. You could, however, if you liked this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!